Hello and welcome to the final episode in Season 1 of the Leadership in Construction podcast. As ever, I'm your host, Michael, and today I am joined by three fantastic guests, each from a separate episode of Season 1. So I'm joined by Brandi Davey, Paul Unwin, and Patricia Haywood. Welcome, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And so in this very last and very special episode, I've invited Paul, Brandi, and Patricia to this episode to put questions to them individually. And these are questions that have come in from listeners and viewers, and really want to get your thoughts on those questions. First of all, I want to start off by thanking Paul, Brandi, and Patricia, and every single guest that has been on the show. It's this experience of starting this podcast in November in 2020 during the second national lockdown. It's been an amazing experience being able to meet fantastic people, meet new people. I mean, for me and Brandi, we've known each other for a while, so it's been great to reconnect and to meet Paul and to do extra things like speaking to University of Coventry and getting to know Patricia really well. It's been a fantastic opportunity to meet some brilliant people. So I want to just thank yourselves and all the guests that have been on the show, first and foremost. And I just want to thank every single listener, every single viewer that have listened to this podcast, because if I've been able to help at least one person, then I feel like this is doing what it's meant to be done for. So I want to start off by saying thank you. What I'll do is I'll start off by sort of asking the first question that's come in. First of all, Brandi, I'll put it to you. So sorry to put you straight on the spot.
That's okay.
And then I'll ask Paul the same question and same Patricia. We'll just talk it through after that. So the first question, which I think is really great, is what advice would you give your younger self, in terms of leadership, when you first started out in construction?
Calm down. Take a step back. Listen to people who've got a lot more experience than you have. And the reason I say calm down, I think that's, again, probably down to my personality. I've always been quite forthright, confident. I think certainly that element of taking a little bit of time to think about the answer, to make the decision with all of the best information that you can, and to go forward, as opposed to that thing in construction where we're like this going, I've got to have the answer now. I would probably advise my younger self just to calm down.
That's a really good answer. And I think we always sort of feel tendency to feel like we're fighting fire sometimes and feel like you've got to get an answer straight away. And I think the truth is sometimes you don't have to get an answer. You can take that time to really get the question and answer it properly. That's great.
And I think there is a balance, isn't there? There are times in construction when a quick decision needs to be taken for productivity, but that doesn't mean you can't take 30 minutes to decide over it. It doesn't always have to be that second.
Mm-hmm.
And I know certainly as a youngster I'd be very quick to make decisions. Unfortunately I didn't regret too many of them, but luck and judgment, I suppose.
Well, that's really great. Paul, what about you? What advice would you give to your younger self?
I think for me it's be authentic. It's actually be yourself, because your views are valid. Yeah, I think when we're young and just starting off in leadership, I think we have to be something special or something we've seen or something kind of out of grasp. But for me, I think what I've learned is actually your gut feeling about, this is the right thing to do, is it? And I think it's when you're young, it's quite courageous to go with that, because you're surrounded with people with lots more knowledge, lots more experience. And maybe you think, is this the right thing to do? Just go for it. If that's what you're feeling, if that's coming from your heart, especially when you're talking about health, safety and well-being, that's probably the right thing. Go with your gut feeling, be authentic, and definitely step up to that. It's hard when you first start to do it, but you kind of get into it. So that's my advice, and I wish I'd started doing that many years ago.
Yeah, because I think as well, if you're not being authentic, it's harder to build trust within teams, trusting teams, because people can see straight through that and sort of see that this person isn't being genuine. That's a really good one. Thank you, Paul. Patricia, what about yourself?
Yeah, I would say similar to Paul, but for me, it would be about standing my power and being comfortable sitting with my pain or that tension. So for me, a lot of it has to do with challenging the status quo. And there were times when I did it. And as you know, we've had this discussion where I was the too much girl, and I've always been the one or one of the people standing up and challenging things or saying, this is perhaps, let's see, we've always done it this way, but is there another way? And there were times when I was made to feel as if my views were relevant. And when you're in that space, it can be very painful, especially if you're young or you're young in the industry. It can be very painful, and you run away, you hide from it because of the shame and just everything that surrounds that. And for me, I would tell my younger self to stand in that power sooner, be comfortable in it, and it's okay to sit with that pain. It's okay to be the only one challenging things. That's fine.
Yeah, because I think sometimes when you do try and challenge and you're sort of like shot down, you sort of feel a bit more unable to challenge again, really, and silenced a little bit. Yeah,
it does, and it robs you of, it robs you, and it robs the project of an opportunity to do better. Because nothing is wrong with challenging or bringing your ideas forward. There are no stupid ideas. You test it, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you go back to the drawing board. And I think if more of us were able to stand in that space and having more ideas coming forward, things would change a lot quicker. We'd be doing a lot better in the delivery of projects for sure.
Absolutely. And Brandi, you're nodding your head. Are you sort of similar experience to that?
Yeah, I certainly have had similar experiences to that. And also, I think when you speak to a team of people about change in particularly, what could we do better? How could we change this? You do often find that the response from those people is, well, there's no point. No one ever listens to what I have to say. Things like innovation don't get captured, and this ends up being, if you like, a negative attitude towards change then on site. So I think a lot of that does perpetuate from what Patricia is saying, where people have made the effort to stand up, to challenge, and essentially been shot down in flames. And people then say, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, certainly, like at the early parts of my career, I was quite a shy person, quite an introvert myself. So I would always sort of hold back my views and my suggestions and never actually say what I was thinking or challenge things. That was something I would definitely teach myself. But as I got older and got into a leadership role, I think I went too far the other way and then didn't listen to anybody. I just thought, okay, well, I know the solution to this, so we're just going to go along with my solution, and I don't care what you think as a team. And I was doing to people what happened to me, and then people stopped voicing their own opinions. People stopped voicing their views, and I think that really caused me a lot of problems, which is what really started me on wanting to learn more about leadership. So,
yeah.
What about you, Paul? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I think I agree with Patricia and Brandi. Really, really interesting. And I think, telling your younger self, it's as leaders, we want to create an environment where our young leaders of the future can contribute. So we create an environment that they feel that their views are going to be listened to and actually taken on board. So it's down to all of us, thinking, back to how we felt when we were younger. Okay, what it was like for me. How can I improve that for the future leaders that are coming through? So definitely creating an environment where challenge is welcome, where actually getting it wrong is okay, because for every, 100 ideas, probably 99 aren't going to be great, but it's worth waiting for the 100th one. And to actually build up those people who are having, lots of ideas. Don't worry if some of them don't make it. I want you to contribute and actually support you to have those ideas. What we don't want to do is create an environment where we shut people down because they've had an idea that we don't believe in, because those people will then stay very quiet and don't feel they can contribute. and we'll lose them in time as well. So for all sorts of reasons, encourage contributions. Doesn't matter if those contributions aren't always great, but to develop and encourage leaders, we need to create an environment where they are welcomed, encouraged, built up, and making kind of more decisions and contributing even more, because as I'm proving now, I say too much already. I need to let other people in and voice their opinions, and I need to listen more.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah. So, yeah, and I think that's all really great stuff and fundamental stuff. It's certainly when I started realizing that as a leadership role that things weren't working was when people stopped contributing and stopped giving ideas and stopped even coming to meetings. That was really sort of the indicator to me. It should have been a big red flag that my skills weren't helping. I wasn't creating that environment where people could feel safe enough to share their ideas. And certainly when I started allowing people to share ideas and create solutions for themselves, total 180 every turnaround, everybody started putting ideas forward, and really I stopped solving problems, which is kind of the sort of thing that I don't want to do anyway. So the next question I'll have, first I'm going to put this one to you, Paul, first, which is, could you describe a time you took a leadership position when you didn't have that sort of leadership title or leadership sort of position within an organization?
Yeah, let's just have a think about that. So that's a role where I was kind of put into a leadership role where, it didn't have a kind of a head of or a chair or of anything like that. So the situation for kind of supporting and developing others. Yeah. So, throughout your career, there are times when you kind of have to take the lead, or you have to jump in because others aren't doing it. And you have a choice in those situations. Either to kind of sit back and stare around and say, oh, somebody else is going to take this lead, I want somebody else to do it. But it's having that confidence to actually step in and say, no, I know a way forward here. And especially for young people, again, it's having that confidence to kind of do that and to step up. Thinking of one for me. So part of what I do is I'm on the committee of the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transportation. That's how I met Brandi, actually, a few years ago. And in the committee, we're all doing it voluntarily. Nobody's got any titles or anything. And we felt as a committee, we wanted to do more on events, a program of events. And I was looking around, I thought, I think this is a great idea. Why isn't everybody kind of putting their hand up? And I hadn't been there kind of very, very long. I thought, well, actually, I'm going to put my hand up for this. I think some of the others were relieved that somebody had actually volunteered. But I think if you've got it in your kind of heart, and if you've got a passion for something, it doesn't matter what your job title is. It is that, it's the passion, it's the wanting to do it, it's the wanting to lead, it's the wanting to contribute. So definitely, you don't wait to have the job title to lead. I come up with this phrase, don't call yourself an artist, paint. You don't have to have the job title before you do it. Just start painting, and then the titles will come. So, that's great. On that one, started organising program events, and immediately, you are in that leadership position because you've got to communicate with people, you've got to put a program together, you've got to kind of get speakers together. So I think that's it. Look for opportunities where you can lead, before you have the title. Don't call yourself an artist, just paint.
That's really good. It's really good. Patricia, can I come to you next?
Well, I I think leadership is more like a state of mind. And it's something that you can embody anyone, anywhere, at any level. For some people, it comes because of where they sit in the organization chart. In construction, that tends to be how it happens. But generally, and I've always believed that you have people who are high up on the ladder and they're not leaders. So I do think that you're able to lead from anywhere you are. And I also think that everyone is a leader, especially in construction, right? We're all leaders of risk management. That's what we do. We're leading from the cleaner right up. We're leading our own scope of work. And collectively, we contribute to the project and the success of the project. So I think that it is important that people understand, and this is what I always like to the apprentices who work with me, is that you are a leader. It is your state of mind, and you can embody that right now. And how do you then act that out? Is by doing good work and doing great work and going over and above, what you are called to do, within reason, of course, and do that. So for my example, when I worked with a construction company where I was not on the board, but I had portfolio that were board level, so I was ownership, for example, of certain change responsibilities, and we're going through transformation within the organization, and I was able to get that, I think, because I don't see leadership as a title. I don't see it as something special that some people have. I see it as a state of mind that you can embody right now. If you look at the best version of yourself, who you want to be, or you can look at maybe people out there who you admire, who are great leaders who you admire, and take the best qualities of them and embody it right now and start acting it out. And that's leadership to me. Because I've met people who are like in the hierarchy, they're, do so and so, and they're not leaders. Definitely not. They don't even have the mind of a leader. So that's how I look at leadership.
No, I completely agree with you. I think that's absolutely fundamental. And Brandi, same question for you.
Yeah, I think what Patricia was saying is it's certainly something that rings true on a project. You have a hierarchical leadership role, if you like, but each individual is responsible for taking leadership in what they are responsible for delivering. Going back to personal experience, I've probably got a few that I could come back to. My first role on the M1, I went to the boss and I said, I realise that we don't do any recycling here. Is it all right if I set up a recycling scheme for the project? It was a £5 million motorway project on the M1. And he said, yeah, if you want, but you've got to run it. So I did. So things like that for me personally, I could go through probably my life and tell you about different experiences where I've put my hand up and said, yeah, I'll have a go at that. Or where I've essentially not stood still. So I'm not the sort of person that looks at what needs to be done and waits for somebody else to do it. I've always been the sort of person that steps forward and says, actually, I'll help with that. I'll lead that. I joke about the fact that all my family are probably a family project managers, if you like. We all like to point and tell everyone else what to do. But from a leadership perspective, I think one that's much more recent for me, my role that I have been doing has varied in these past few years since I set the business up. And one of the roles that I've done is as the NEC Free Work Supervisor, which is a role I know you've done yourself as a sort of designer representative, employees representative on site. And the contractor wanted to do something a particular way. And I wasn't able to directly say to the contractor, I don't want you to do it like that. I would like you to do it like this. And so there was, if you like, a move away from that traditional leadership of, hang on a minute, I'd like it to be done from here to here. And that little bit of coaching and influencing and looking at the constraints in a different way to perhaps they were perceiving them to be. The long and the short of it was they wanted to close a road that couldn't be closed. And we were looking at how we could continue to do that work safely. And they were finding it very difficult to find a way around the constraint. So I was able to work with them and talk them through it, but I wasn't responsible directly for leading them. And you know, it ties back to what Patricia's saying. It's what all of us essentially do to step up when we're in that situation. How can we move things forward? How can we get things done?
I mean, I guess what I hear a lot from both yourself and Patricia and Paul is putting your hand up to do something, to really sort of jump into that role without either being asked or without having really any authority or that. Sometimes maybe even that kind of experience. And I think something that Patricia touched on is about health and safety. We all have the responsibility around health and safety, and I know that we can all do better. And we have the responsibility to kind of lead, and if we create those environments, which we talked about earlier, about where we can feel safe enough to speak up, we can, you know, speak up about health and safety issues without feeling of being ridiculed. You know, this is how we've always done it, sort of thing. You know, there's better ways for doing that. And I think I was always quite good early on in my career for trying to put my hand up and do the little bit extras and lead. And I think I slowed down doing that. And only recently now, I suppose the sort of thing that I do now is around sort of development and development of others. I feel like I don't develop myself in terms of my career, in terms of I don't now read books on concrete and read books on you know, technical things. I try and help those that want to go for incorporated or chartership and develop them. And I've got fed up with sort of saying, oh yes, you know, you need to get that experience, or we'll get round to giving you that sort of training. It's like, no, we're going to do the training. It takes an hour. Let's do an hour every fortnight. Let's do it out of hours. We're gonna get you that training. And you know, if you need someone to help you with your mentorship to get your incorporation or your chartership, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to help you make sure you do that. So I've actively decided, because I want to do that, I've gone to my director and says, well, look, any reason why I can't be a delegate engineer to help this person through their IPD, or any reason why I can't help mentor this individual to get them through to their incorporation, because I sort of feel that it's fundamental that we continue to develop people, even specifically now when we're under a bit more pressure, and maybe budgets are a bit tighter. We find it difficult to find the time to develop and learn. So I, in terms of taking the lead when it's not my role or position, you know, I try to make sure that we lead in people to develop and grow themselves, which in turn helps the team, helps the organisation achieve their goals. You know, so it's a good benefit for everybody in reality. But yeah, I think, you know, certainly it's putting your hand up to volunteer to take the lead on something, isn't it? I think you've also demonstrated that as well. So yeah, thank you for those stories. They're brilliant. One of the great questions that I'll start off with you, Patricia, if that's okay. And I think I probably know who you're going to say. But who do you look up to as a leader? And this is something that we touched on in our episode about, you mentioned Michelle Obama being one. Who do you look up to as a leader?
Yeah, I look up to Michelle Obama. You know, she's a lawyer too. So, but I look up for, like, you know, because leadership. And this is another thing with leadership. It's something that you have to work at every single day to be better, as you pointed out, because there's a trap. There are two extremes, you know, either you're bad at it, or you get too good at it that you think, you know, everything stops with you. So I work on it daily, and, you know, who I look to, like, as I told you before, I look at Napoleon Hill. You know, I listen to a lot about that. I also, you know, read a lot from, like, Marcus Garvey, he's Jamaican. I read a lot of speeches, like Malcolm X, he was really good at leading. So those are the type of people that I look to. I see what they've done, I pick things that I like, and I pull on it, and just use that to inspire me. And even in everyday, you know, I've lived in so many different countries, even living like in Uganda, and that's why, you know, I believe that leadership is really something that everybody can embody. Because when I lived, for example, in Kampala, and I would see, like, the market lady, she's a leader. a leader in her community, coming out every day to make money. She gives back to her community, or even another thing. So those people also inspire me. Those women who, especially in African cultures, where they go out, they earn, and what they earn might help out their whole village. Those are leaders, and they also inspire me to know that, to do more, because especially when you live in like a developed country, we take so many things for granted, that it really grounds me and bring me back to basic. That leadership is also about giving. Leadership is also about contribution. It's not just about standing up and giving orders and all that stuff. A true leader is someone who, as Brandi said, sees the gap, and they step up, and also someone who can look into the future and see what can be and bring it into the present, and have the buy-in of everyone to work towards that thing that they see in the future, which, that's what I've seen, especially coming from Jamaica and growing up the way I did. I see a lot of that in everyday people, some of them nameless, but they also inspire me.
That's a really good one, and I think that's probably a common misconception, is that as you look up to sort of leaders, you think about sort of extremely very well popular people and people at the top of organizations and things like that. But you're right, just those people that take the initiative, take the lead to go and earn some money by selling fruit or selling vegetables, whatever it is, to then help look after their community and look after their village. That can also be inspiring, but that's also a great leader, and I think that's brilliant. I think one of the really great episodes I did with More Blessing Luxor, she's doing great projects out in Africa at the moment, where which brilliant. and these are cross-border trades. This is help facilitating trade across these borders to help these people to be able to make a living and be able to help feed their family and feed their community. Those kind of projects are so inspiring. Like, those ones take very little effort to get people behind those projects, and I'm sure the leaders have got a really great, easy job of being able to show them the impact and show them what benefit that project's going to bring. That's really great story. Thank you. Brandi, what about yourself? Who do you look up to as a leader?
I wrote the question down, and I was racking my brain thinking, who is it? Who's famous that I really look up to? And I don't particularly watch a lot of TV or anything like that, so I wouldn't honestly say there's anybody that you'd look up and go, oh yeah, it's them. Very much like what Patricia said, I've grown up fortunately with some really strong women around me, and I think that has enabled me to see the way they live their lives and reflect a lot of their qualities in myself, whether it's my auntie Janet, mum's best friend, we're from the north, who has shown so much empathy and care and love for people in the way that she leads, but also doesn't take any rubbish from people, so she's quite a staunch, strong woman as well. My auntie Evelyn, another good friend of my mum's, who says what's on her mind, is very honest and is very authentic. I've grown up around those sorts of women in my life. With regard to the industry, obviously I've worked with a lot of large companies. I've worked with a huge amount of different contractors, be it as subcontract or direct contracting. And I think one of the people that I met in the course of my work was Sir Michael Marshall, who has passed away now. But when we did the runway project at Cambridge Airport, he came out to site to visit us twice. And even at that point, when he was in his mid to late 80s, he was very human, which sounds probably, I don't know, condescending maybe, but the expectation from somebody like me to meet a sir and to meet somebody who is essentially looking after this absolutely ginormous company and has been doing so for many, many, many years would be that he probably didn't have a lot of interest in what we were doing. It was a very, very small part of his organisation's delivery targets, but he was very interested, to the point where he wanted to know who my family were, where I lived, and it really made me feel a part of his team. and want to deliver what we were aiming to deliver to the absolute best of my ability. And to me, that's what leadership and having a good leader is about. It's making your team be able to do what you need them to do, and to motivate people and inspire people to deliver an end goal, especially when it's project related. So yeah. So Michael Marshall is a very good man. Yeah.
That's a really great story, and I think that's quite important. That you can almost certainly, it can be almost intimidating when you sort of meet those people. I mean, when I met sort of my CEO of RPF, I thought quite intimidated. Like, how's he going to receive this? Is he going to like me? Is he going to be able to really give us some value? And actually, it ended up really caring and showing genuine and being authentic and all those sorts of great things we've already talked about. And sometimes I think it can surprise you, can't it? So
very much so. Yeah.
Fantastic. Go on then, Paul. What about you then? Who do you look up to?
Yeah, and I'm grateful for the time to collect my thoughts and listen to Brandi and Patricia. So I've had a little bit more time to think about this, and I've written a few names down. So for me, it's those people who are inspirational, who make a difference. I've been involved in Amnesty International for most of my adult life. I'm getting quite old now, so it's kind of over 35 years. So human rights are very important to me, and justice and injustice. So Claire, you probably know where I'm going to go with this. So the ultimate person for me is Nelson Mandela. Not just for what he did, but for the grace and the humility and the way that he did it. After being incarcerated in South Africa for all those many years, but then to look at bringing that country together is beyond amazing, beyond awesome to have that approach. And I think we all recognize what he did, but how difficult was that to do that for him? So that for me is inspiration, and that's not just on a high level, that's on a super level of making a difference. There are a couple of other people who and I kind of look for phrases and words that they use and how they behave. Another one for me is the author Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah, an amazing, awesome book, and Patricia's kind of smiling and nodding there. The character of Atticus Finch. That's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be that type of person who actually kind of stands up for other people, who gets on their side, on the side of the small people, on the disadvantaged, on the outcast. That's leadership for me. And I've just got two more, if I may. Mm-hmm. There was an actor called Paul Eddington that some may know. He was in The Good Life, and he's been he died of skin cancer some years ago, and I heard him on a program they pre-recorded before he died, and he looked terrible. He had kind of skin cancer, but they asked him this great question, and I'll never forget it. So, how would you like to be remembered? And he thought for a moment, and he turned around and said, I'd like to be remembered as someone who did little harm. And I thought that was just a kind of gentle, really nice thing to say. Not that he wanted to be remembered for any wonderful or marvelous or amazing things he did, but that he kind of stepped gently on this planet and didn't make it any worse. So for me, that's the kind of the basic. Whatever we do, let's not try and harm other people. Let's make all our interactions, especially as leaders, with other people, something that builds them up and encourages them and makes them feel better about themselves. And the final one is a very, very recent one. And if anybody watched the Biden presidential inauguration, Amanda Gorman, who was a young black woman poet, and I had to play it back and play it back and play it back because I was crying all the way through it. And I said, yes, yes, yes. This is, and it gave me kind of real hope for the future, for young women like Amanda getting it and wanting to make a difference. And I just see her doing amazing things in the future. So great, let's have more of that, please. More, young people who grasp what leadership is, because that's definitely leadership, what she was doing there. And she's a completely inspiration, and just awesome. So quite a wide range there for me.
That's brilliant. The one that I really liked was the one about leave little harm behind. I think as we work in the construction industry, we're always impacting the environment, we're impacting people's health and safety in society. I think that's something that we should adopt as the construction industry, is that we should leave a legacy that leaves little harm. Tread lightly, and with massive lorries going by every so often, and it's hard to sort of see that. But I think that's hugely important. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. There's some great ones in there. And I think sort of for myself, one of the people that I started following years and years ago, which sort of helped me along this journey of leadership, was Simon Sinek. So I've been reading a couple of his books, and that's really given me some great inspiration and some knowledge. And so, so sort of a popular person that I don't know that has inspired me and as a leader I look up to, certainly Simon Sinek and Gary Vee is another one. And it's sort of people that I know, obviously every single guest, you three, I look up to as leaders. I've learned so much from all you three, and so many people that are guests on the show. But on a sort of personal level, all these sort of qualities of a great leader that we talk about listening, empathy, communicating, caring, things like that. It might sound corny, but my wife as well. My wife embodies all those sort of great qualities. If we've got something going off at work, or if we've got something going off, something in another part of the family, she's always there to sort of support, listen. She always puts other people first. And just by sort of watching her and how she is with our children, that just helps inspire me to sort of, because I relate parenting very closely to leadership. And just sort of watching her with the children just helps me to sort of remember how I can sort of apply those sort of similar sort of skills to listening, caring, patience to the people that I lead and the people I've followed. So, it sounds probably a little bit corny, but that's the sort of people that I look up to as a leader. And through doing these podcasts, so a lot of these are really late at night. I did one with Australia very recently, and that was up to like midnight doing that podcast, which I really enjoyed. But the support as well, just being able to say, if this is what makes you happy and this is what's going to help you do better, then you could go for it. And she's been there with me every step of the way. So I couldn't thank her enough, really. So yeah, thank you for that. This last question, we've got plenty of time. So this last question is actually probably a bit of a head scratcher. So Paul, you've drawn the short straw. But it's actually probably quite a sort of fundamental question: is how can a leader fail? So, because we always say, when we're leading people, that they're gonna fall down, they're gonna fail, and they need supporting. We've talked about this plenty of times: the buildings on fire conversation versus getting back on the bike conversation. But leaders are human as well, and we fail. We fail people. We fail on all the time. How do you think leaders should fail? Yeah.
So just to explain, you mentioned a couple of things that we've talked about before: the building on fire and riding a bike. For the uninitiated, let's talk about a couple of those. So yeah, leaders can fail immediately if every conversation they have is a building on fire conversation. So let's explain that. So when a building is on fire, there's no argument. We're getting out of the building. End of. Often some leaders will try and shut down any opposition by turning every conversation they have into a building on fire conversation. This is the way it's going to be. Shut up, almost, by saying that. And what happens is, your people will shut up. They will not follow you. They will look for somebody else, because that's not feeding them. That's not encouraging. That's not developing. That's not leadership. That's autocracy and totalitarianism, and taken to its ultimate, that's bullying. Yeah, that's where leaders fail, when you don't create an environment where you look to listen and learn from your people, and when you want to hear their views and their opinions. I work best, and I'm sure we all do, when we feel that our views are taken on board, when we're listened to, when we're appreciated. I will then contribute more. So anyone who thinks leadership is being bossy, is making people do what I tell them to do, will fail and will get very, very lonely, and will find that people don't want to talk to them and don't want to kind of be in the same room with them maybe at the same time. And the other one is the kind of riding a bike. So you've got children, Michael. We talked about this before. What's the first thing that's going to happen when you try and teach your child to ride a bike? They're going to fall off. Yeah, that's what happens. As a parent, then they're going to look at you. You are the leader in their eyes, and they're looking to see your attitude and what you do about that. And as a parent, you got to say, oh yeah, I kind of expected that to happen. Let's get back on the bike and go along. If a kind of bad leadership approach on that would be, oh, you're clearly rubbish at riding a bike. I'm going to take it off you. You're never going to ride a bike again. So often, I think we see in leadership situations when somebody makes a mistake, that leader says, you're an idiot, and this blame culture comes in, and that kind of destroys that person's confidence. So leaders fail when they're autocratic, when they don't listen, and when they don't encourage, and when they don't get people back on the bike. So that's where I am on poor leadership, and I still see it far too many times, I'm afraid. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we have talked about there are times when you need to have that buildings on fire conversation, when it really is a building on fire.
Yeah.
When it is we need to make a decision on this topic. And sometimes I think you might agree with this, is that can sometimes leave a leader quite isolated. If they have to make a decision, sometimes decisions have to be made, and sometimes they're not the most popular decision to be made. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, obviously, as a leader, we are responsible and accountable, and we have to make the decisions. But I think where I'm coming from is I want to learn about all the different options before I jump in with mine. Sometimes with some leaders, the first kind of solution is their only solution, and it's not quite sure. I want to be consultative on, I want to listen to a range of views, and absolutely then I will make a decision on that. And it probably won't be the most popular one, because we can't please other people all the time. We'll try as far as we can to do that, but that's not always possible. And as leaders, you must have the kind of strength of your conviction to take those decisions. But I think what I'm saying is actually try and take the people along with you. Those decisions. Yeah, thanks, Brandi. Try and take the people along with you, because those decisions then will be sustainable and last. And again, those are the teams I want to be with. Doesn't really matter to me if, when I've voiced my opinion, if it isn't taken on and somebody's got a kind of better, view of it, but at least I'll be listened to. At least I've got a voice, and I will contribute again next time. Otherwise, I'll start being quiet. Okay.
Brandi, you were nodding a lot.
I was nodding on that, especially Paul's point there about taking people with you. It's a specific statement that I made about one of my managers, is that he has a very clear, defining way of how he wants to do something, but he needs to bring people with him, because if he doesn't, everybody is going to be sitting there wondering what their part in this is. And it's an environment that I have been in, and it is very unpleasant. It's not pleasant to work underneath somebody whose attitude is, we're doing this, but without any reason or allowing for challenge or any of that. But that's the exact statement that I used. He has to take people with him. So, in response to the question, how can a leader fail? I think there's a a few different factors around that. And a key thing is understanding the people that you have working for you. I have 2 apprentices at the moment of very different ages. And I have to have an understanding when I'm dealing with those apprentices of the way that they're reacting to what I'm saying and the way that I go about asking them to do different tasks. There are certain things that I will ask to be done by my apprentices that are based on things that are new to them. So I'm asking them to do things that are outside of their comfort zone. So the way that I ask them, the way that I approach them to do that has to fit in with them believing that they're capable of doing those things. And there has to be time spent. Initially, when you're bringing people in like that, mentoring, supporting, coaching, it can take quite a bit of time. So I can understand as a leader why that approach doesn't always work, because people don't always necessarily have that time to spend, or they don't necessarily understand their workforce. So they may ask somebody who doesn't like change or who is quite introverted, right, we're not going to do it like that today, we're going to do it like this. And that person that's it, they shut down. Any opportunity to get the best out of that person is gone because they weren't approached in the right way initially. So I think a leader can fail by not really understanding the people they've got, not understanding the people's strengths and weaknesses. And another facet is not responding to your people. Again, I've worked under managers, and I've no doubt that I've been a manager myself. When people have wanted to talk to you, or they've emailed you a question, or they've called you to ask a question, and you've gone, "Oh, I don't really want to answer that just now. I'll come back to it," or I'll call them back. But then the call back doesn't happen, and you get another call 2 days later, and that person's still waiting on your response from 2 days previous. You've lost them. Apart from anything else, they're now feeling irrelevant. You've potentially undermined any sort of conversation that they wanted to have with you, because it's now it's not in time, it's in the past, it's gone. And you haven't been there for your people when perhaps they've been having concerns, they've been having anxieties, or even when they've had a really good idea. One of the things that we did when I worked out in the Falkland Islands is we did a list of innovations that came from the workforce. So when the workforce had come and said, "I've got a good idea," we made sure we documented it. And we had on that project something like £300,000 worth of savings as a result of the project team. There's about 120 people out there. And there were some people out there whose core business was knowing about mechanics on vehicles. So they knew how to save money and how to work that equipment more efficiently. I don't know that. I don't know about those things. They did. And when you're in the Falkland Islands, 8,000 miles away from home, you're trying to deliver a project with all the challenges that are associated with that anyway, and you've got your team behind you and they're coming up with these good ideas, that's what you need. If you're not willing to take those people with you, you might get there, but you'll be on your own when you do.
Yeah. It reminds me of something that Simon Sinek says, which is give authority to the people with the information. You know, it's no good one person at the top of an organisation having all authority but none of the information, because as you say, they don't know how to get the best of the efficiency out of the machines that are on the ground. But the people that sit in the machines and that work with them day in, day out, they do have that information. They do know that. Give them authority, and as a leader, that sort of means letting go some sort of sense of control a little bit. And that was something I always struggled with, was, but what if they make a mistake? What if it goes wrong? Okay, that's all right. That's meant to happen. You know, as you say, when you're on the bike, you're meant to fall off the first time you get on a bike. You know, when you start learning to drive, you're meant to probably stall it 3 or 4 times. You know, probably not after about 10 years of driving, which I still do now. But you know, that's really important. And the other thing that you mentioned is about perspective, understanding people's different backgrounds and the way they approach the situation. We have some really great conversations, because like you, we have in our team people of lots of different ages, lots of different backgrounds, lots of different abilities. And I think I probably spend a lot of my time just trying to figure that out. What is the best approach for this? And then with other managers and other team leaders, we'll talk about it as well, just to sort of, well, actually, have you tried this approach? Maybe you're releasing the strings too soon. Maybe they need a bit more direction. And the more you do that over time, as you think, 'cause it does take time. And that's the thing with leadership. It's not something that happens overnight, which is what I was hoping it would be, which is a lot of us probably hope that the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out. And if you do spend more time, the more valued they feel, and certainly the more they understand what their expectations are for them. So yeah, I agree with absolutely everything you've said. Patricia, what do you want to add? Have we said everything?
Yes, but for me, I believe there are two purposes in life. One of which is to help each other. That's really why we're here. How you help the other person is up to you. And I think if you come from that point of view, there's a fork in the road. And one is that you either become a person who gives a lot of value, tremendous value, and you're human-centered. And that leads you down the path of success, in my view, because success tends to be coupled with that. And then the other part is where you come from a point of always getting as much as you can get from others. And that's where the ego sits in. And that's where I think the failure comes. And for a lot of leaders, they reach this fork in the road. And the ones that I've seen who have failed are the ones where they've taken the route of I'm going to get as much as I can at the expense of anyone or anything, and the ego takes over. And at that point, going back to what Paul and Brandi said, they don't listen. They make decisions themselves. They don't take people along with them because the ego takes over. You can't be a good leader with the ego taking over, being in the driver's seat. And that's where I see often the failure. So if the leader comes from a point of, and we've talked about this in construction, even we're in construction to help people, we build things for people, and we've forgotten that. And so that's the failure that I see within the industry, and also within some of the so-called leaders within the industry. It's become a numbers game. We don't talk about value for money, and it's become a bottom line game. And we see this even in the housing sector, right? In construction, the number of houses that are being built is held back, to keep the market all buoyant. We see it because, for many of us, we've gone down the road of I'm going to see how much I can get at the expense of others, it takes us off our human purpose, which is to help each other, and the ego takes over, and that's the failure. If a leader, does something and it doesn't work out, I don't see that as failure. I see it as a lesson learned, and we can implement that in the next project. But if it's a leader who is totally caught up in him or herself, we work with people like this. We see them, they walk around the sites and it's just like, the buck stops with me and you shut up. And we've been in, rooms where the discussions are just toxic. That's failure.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, egos definitely have a play and a part in all that. And I've been to construction sites where the project manager doesn't want to get to know the people actually working on the job, digging a trench and filling it with concrete, things like that. And I think those people are the most fascinating. And so it's like we're talking about Brandi, they're the ones with all the information. They know what problems they've got. You've got to strip ego out of that, and the more that you get to know everyone on the project, the more you help them take blockers out of their way, like you're saying, the better they can do a better job and safer, and one that's definitely going to benefit the project. Yeah. So I think
I'll give you I worked on a project once, and so we'll all come down, we have these meetings, everybody comes down, all the subcontractors, the contractors, and we'd have this once a week meeting where we're supposed to all come together and kumbaya. And I remember the project manager, something happened inside he wasn't happy with, and we were all sat there, and I remember the project manager saying, I make more than all of you in here. And I was just like, wow. like I wouldn't feel confident going to talk to him again because we're not on the same payroll. Like construction, it's filled with a lot of men and workers, and even imagine coming out of that room, I could hear like the other guys talking, like, how dare you talk to me like that, come on, you've already broken down any amount of camaraderie on the site, like coming like that. So yeah. That's fitting in my book.
Just adding to that, just today on LinkedIn, and it's a phrase I've seen before, Patricia, there's something called HIPPO, which is called the highest paid person's opinion. And that's a very good example what you said there. The HIPPO isn't always right. Yeah.
I've not heard that one. That's good. And what you say, Patricia, about helping others. I mean, I think that's something I've learned, and something that, as a younger person, I always saw myself as selfless and wanted to help others more than anything, more than helping myself. I think I got lost along the way and got into this trap of having to make the numbers fit and having to get projects on deadlines and make a profit, things like this. And then now I'm sort of in the mindset of it's far better and it feels far better to help others and genuinely help others. And I think that's right. I think that is what leadership is. And if you are self-serving, and you have an ego, that's when it goes wrong. That's when projects don't work and you forget about deadlines and budgets and whatever else. They're just going to fall, and it's not a legacy that you left behind, and nobody benefits from it. You just got some arbitrary numbers at the end, which you can change at any point throughout the project. You can start off with a completion date, and it will be 3 or 4 months later when the actual completion date is. You can just change those arbitrary targets throughout the thing. So yeah, that's really really great stuff. I completely believe in that. So I'm sort of out of questions now. Is anything else that you want to put to the floor? Any questions that you might have?
I'm just going to ask you all if there's one kind of phrase or word that you'd maybe suggest to leaders. What would it be? And I'm going to include you in that as well, Michael. And I didn't
think I'd escape it.
And I think for me, it's the kind of just 2 words. It's be kind, and I think we covered that, a lot. Be kind. We've said, try and do little harm, and that's around that servant leadership, which is, I think, was what you were talking about there, Michael. So that's my challenge to you 3 now.
So what was the challenge so far? So what was 2 words?
Yeah, what is your words? Any number of words you like, whether it's a phrase or whatever. How would you like to kind of lead it? What does leadership in company? What does leadership say to you, and what would you share as your kind of strap line for what leadership is, and the kind of behaviours that you'd like to see?
Mm-hmm. Who wants to go first?
Me, I've got one. I don't want anyone else to say it.
Go on, then you go.
So mine is, I know after we finished the podcast last time, I said, communication, after we'd said it about 45 times during the hour we were talking. Communicate effectively. And by that, I don't mean just talk to people. I mean, understand what people, what their mechanism of communication is. Learn to read people, learn to understand a room, if you like. And I think one of the things I've noticed coming in through the industry, working on large projects, is that a huge amount of information is generated on all of these projects. A huge amount of detail and work goes into things like the work specifications and the drawings. And there are many, many times when the people who are actually building the project have never seen that information, which is disconcerting at best, and woefully wrong at worst. I think it's that information is available. I'm not saying that you should necessarily give everybody out on site a copy of the specification, but there should certainly be a mechanism of communicating what the end game is to those people so that they can deliver their jobs effectively, and so that essentially what you're being paid for, what those numbers are supposed to add up for at the end, is delivered successfully. The projects that I've worked on that have been delivered successfully, at the end of them, have resulted in friendships for life. They have resulted in camaraderie. They've resulted in many people essentially being able to applaud that achievement. And I've worked in ones that haven't been quite as good as well. And it's not a pleasant feeling. So if you can communicate effectively, that will help you in delivering the project, be it via what needed to be delivered, as Patricia said, building it for people to use, and hopefully you'll satisfy the accountants as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought a lot about communication since we first spoke in November, it seems like such a basic thing, communication. It seems like a basic thing, but it's so often, and I've tried to keep real track of it, how often what you say or what you hear is completely different from what people say or hear. It's all miscommunication. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like this. I should have made that clearer. It is, we take it a little bit for granted. We don't really emphasize, as you put it, enough about the need for communication and the need for clear communication. As you say, the information's there, and everybody is, the power is with that information. And so the more people that have that information, the better. And how that's communicated and how's that received. I try to consciously now, so if I'm setting some work or something like that, we'll do it verbally. I'll do it in an email, so it's written down, and we'll do a couple of check-in sessions. You know, ask me a question. You're still okay with everything I asked? You know, any questions and things like that. And I think, you know, if you get it into different forms, that certainly helps. And one of the things you mentioned in our podcast was about anything can be a communication. One thing I've tried to educate the people that I work with a lot more is that the drawings that we produce tremendous number of drawings. It's trying to think about, this is a communication, what you're trying to say, what's the story you're trying to tell. And I did a really great podcast with a woman called Stephanie Somerville, and all about storytelling, because we all need to be able to say the vision, give them why are we here, and also how you write a report, how you construct a drawing is all about. It's all communication at the end of the day. You've got to make sure that is received the way it's meant to be received. So yeah, I think communication's understated. I think. Yeah. Thank you, Patricia. I'll let you go first.
You know, I would say know thyself. It's very important that as a leader, you know yourself, you know your strengths, and you know your weaknesses, and so you can then assemble a team that will, you know, deal with tasks that you're not particularly good in or good at. But one of the things that Brandi touched on earlier that I want to, you know, about decisions, and in construction we make decisions so quickly. I would say that is so true, and I always talk about this, like we don't even get a minute to think, you know. And one of the things that I really think that we need to practice is to think slow and act fast. But we need to start thinking slowly, and that will help us to make better decisions, because right now we make decisions in such a rush, and oftentimes, you know, it doesn't pay off the way we expected. So I would say, you know, think slow, act fast.
That's really good. Yeah, I think I'm really sort of guilty for that as well, or have been, in terms of acting fast and pushing people to get answers out fast. And you're right. I think time is understated as well. You know, we've always got more time to make these decisions, more time than you think to make these sort of decisions. Yeah, I guess it's my turn. So I suppose for me, this will lead into what I promised, which was what I think is the most important aspect of leadership. So for me, the word is belongingness, and if you think about all the conversations, all the elements and qualities of leadership that we've talked about. I mean, I've done 21 episodes now, and I've spoken to 21 brilliant people, and we've talked about some fantastic subjects. And we talk about leading with smile, listening. We talk about authenticity, communication, self-awareness. These are all great actions of great leaders. And I think it's around the one subject of belongingness, because what we say a lot of the time is create that environment in which people can thrive, and ideas and solutions can thrive, and people bring them the best selves. And well, you know, how do we sort of do that? And I think this is all around belongingness. And so, and there is science behind this. So I've been doing as a bit of like a geek, a bit of research into the science behind this, into sort of happy hormones. So the element of belongingness and relationships all around the hormone oxytocin. And oxytocin is probably one of the most powerful hormones, and certainly happy hormones you can ever imagine. And for those that might not be aware, something I wasn't aware until we had our third child, that the hormone responsible for contractions during labor is oxytocin. And it's also that same hormone that makes you bond with your children when they first, and when you're just playing with your children or playing, have a dog and you're taking your dog for a walk, or you're playing with your dog, or any sort of pet. These all just bring you that sense of belongingness and relationships that release these oxytocin feelings. Give those people the sense of being able to psychologically feel safe to share their ideas and feel safe. And this sort of fits into that structure of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if I look at business and organizations and the construction industry, the only other sort of happy hormone that we see is dopamine. And this is the sort of hormone that relates to our reward system. So our brain rewards us, so when we do something good, when we tick things off on a list. I mean, I always write to-do lists and write something on there that I've already done, just so I can tick it off and give myself that dopamine hit. As I've already done that, it's great, I've ticked that one off already. And now while we're more remote, I have OneNote and it has a great to-do list. So I just go tick, 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 tick. And so I can't leave a list with not having everything unticked. And if it's something that didn't get done, I can't just delete it then, And what this means is that because dopamine is a very addictive hormone. It's like a drug. It's like alcohol or drugs or anything like that. Gambling, because you get these dopamine hits. It's very addictive, which means that we can fall into this trap. And I did this is thinking about goals, setting targets, and aiming to achieve it. When you achieve it, then you've got to go make the goal bigger and go next. And it can work out well because we all need to have goals and have a vision and a direction. And sometimes businesses need that in order to maintain profitability. But it's a trap. As I say, it's an addiction. If we just focus on goals, we just focus on the numbers and getting profit and meeting deadlines, it does nothing for building that environment when we can have great solutions and the people can come and bring them absolute best selves. So in the workplace, in construction and in organizations, we need to really sort of think about these oxytocins and developing these oxytocins within the people that we work with, really caring about people, really listening to, your thoughts about, so Marshall talking to you about, your family, really get to know those people, really sort of look out for their interests and have their back, spend time building those relationships, building up those feelings of oxytocins, because, even now we have so many conversations and almost kind of depressing conversations about salary rises and promotions. You imagine in this pandemic right now, that's not happening as much. But what I fear is that then people don't feel valued, because certainly, when you've got these releases of oxytocins and you feel like you belong, you're not so much worried about your salary as such, or less important, or your promotion. It becomes less important. It becomes more about sticking with your team, sticking with the people that you like, and you feel valued. So as I say, for me, it's belongingness. It's all these great actions that we've talked about that help to pull those things together and create teams of people that feel valued and in this environment where they feel like they can thrive. So I went off on a bit of a rant there, but for me, it's belongingness, and that to me is the most important aspect of leadership.
Great.
But I would add, as we discussed, working on major projects and projects where you're in the matrix. One of the ways in order to address that and to achieve similar to what you've expressed is we need to, especially major projects, we're like 5, sometimes 10 years on one project, is that we need to start viewing it as an organization and not just something temporary. And even the way we define projects, it's something temporary. You have companies that their whole life existence is 5 years, 10 years. So we need to start viewing it as that, and that's when we're going to start valuing people more. Because right now, how projects are, it's like a revolving door. like the door that people just come and go. You don't even know, some people, you don't even know their name. You just turn the project Monday morning and see a new guy. Oh, and then so you don't have that connection with people because of that, and also that's one of the reasons why people just come and go too, because they don't have that feeling of belonging. But if we can start looking at projects as these temporary outfits, offshoots of these major organizations, and start looking at them as organizations within themselves, then I think we can strive to achieving some of that, because then some of the responsibilities, as we've discussed, will get pushed down to the project. Some of the authority decision making will be done at a project level, which in many projects right now it's not done there. So you can't, for example, reward people properly. People don't really get promotions on projects. You sit there in whatever, in most projects, whatever level you came at, you leave. That's why people tend to leave too. So you really don't get that feeling of reward. You don't get that feeling of belonging. You don't get to know people. It's just a revolving door, this temporary outfit. And so if we change the definition of what a project is, especially a major project, which is 10 years, and start, pushing down some of the authority and decision making, and start changing the way we look at things, and going back to what's our purpose, human, helping human, and how you choose to do that is your decision. But that's how we're going to start changing how things are done within the industry, and really having that connection.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
I would add to that, Patricia, as well, in that one thing I've noticed on those sorts of major projects is you tend to have people working sometimes 6-7 days a week. There's an expectation that they'll be on site. There's this sort of martyrdom around being there for 13 or 14 or sometimes even longer hours, or even doing a night shift and coming back for a few hours in the day for a meeting. And there's a real expectation that people will do that for a long period of time. And as a result, you often see people, they don't take annual leave, they don't have any holiday, and they get sick and they leave the project anyway. And it's not done in a planned way like a holiday would be, so that then there's a gap from where they've gone. And when you're talking about people, belongingness, health, this sort of martyrdom we have about long hours in the industry, it's not healthy. It's not good for people. And when projects are treated as a project and not as an organisation, that it perpetuates that.
Yeah, as leaders, we got to start calling out long hours cultures. It's not acceptable. It's not sustainable. It has implications for health, safety, and well-being. If you're tired, you're going to make a mistake and affect others. I recall Shania Twain. Great philosopher, Shania Twain. That don't impress me much. Okay.
But how many times, Paul, by the same token, have you heard somebody say, he was a great boss, he was always the first one here and the last one out of the office every single day, and whatever I could do, he could do for me. You could polish his boots, that kind of thing, that sort of hero worship of people that do those long hours, that then makes people feel like they ought to be doing them as well, and you lose productivity.
I've
you're not a hero in your family's eyes. Sorry, Mike, I'm sure that's it. If you're giving there, you're not giving at home, and there's that work-life balance. Sorry to crush.
No, I agree. And as I have in these conversations before, where people almost glorify the fact that, I did 80 hours week this week or whatever, and I'm working on 10 projects. And like, how can you have your focus on 10 projects? That just doesn't work. I would struggle if I had my focus on more than 2. It's just, you're going to do yourself and the projects and the people that you work on if you really just focus all that productivity time onto it. I think it was I can't remember which country it was, or a certain organisation where they've now gone down, that's within the construction industry, down to 4-day working to drive productivity, and I definitely advocate for that. But I think a lot of people said to me when I first had children that my productivity was going to go down because I'd had less time, I'd be more tired. If anything, my productivity went up because, Patricia, nodding, because I valued my time more. I wanted to make sure that I got all the work that I need to get done in those set hours, because I was going to get home, I was going to try and turn my phone off, turn the laptop off, and spend time. And I think this is where, for me, working from home and this pandemic has worked out really well for me, because I've been able to really strike that balance. I've not been traveling as much, and I think we are more productive when we've got less time. We've got to fulfill the same duties in that less time. So spending 18 hours trying to do the same one task is not productive. That's not 18 hours of productive work. So yeah, it's a shame that we kind of, in some respects, we kind of glorify that as well. Good. Yeah. Good. Well, we're sort of coming to this end of this podcast now, and I once again just want to thank yourselves for being part of this finale, and every single guest. I've learned so much from you three and so much from our guests. I just want to invite you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, or?
I'd just say I've learned a lot from my co-presenters here as well, and for the full series, and it's been a privilege to get to know you, and thank you, Michael, for what you're doing in this space. It's definitely needed, and more strength to your elbow, and I hope you kind of carry on and do things at the next level as well. You've definitely got a calling for this, for having a voice in the leadership space. So thank you.
And thank you, Paul. It's been great to get to know you better as well. Yeah, so thank you ever so much, and all the opportunities as well that you've passed my way in terms of being able to speak with Open University, with Coventry University, these sort of things. Yeah, great.
Yes,
anything more from Brandi or Patricia?
I agree. I think we don't talk about leadership enough in the industry, and unsubscribe on Spotify. The podcast, and I really like it. I love it. I love the diversity in terms of the guests that you have with different views, and I really think this is a good niche that you're carving out. I really look forward to see how it develops. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
And then from me, Michael, it's been a pleasure to be involved with it, for one, and to listen to the episodes week on week, and also to be able to recommend these to the people that I'm mentoring and coaching, because I think it is important to have these discussions and to make these people that are perhaps less experienced in the industry and only exposed to the leaders that they work with immediately, to see different viewpoints and people from different aspects of the industry and what they have experienced and what they've got to offer. So thank you.
No, I mean, I've gained so much out of this. I've learned, I've questioned myself and the way I do things many times through these conversations. And I've got to say as well, this isn't going to end. So this is just the end of the first season. So come November, I'll start again. So I'll be looking for guests for that. And, you three might be getting a call as well to see if you'd like to come back on. I really enjoy doing this, and as I always said, if I'm helping one person out, then this is doing what it should be doing. And in that interim time, I'm going to be doing more things to try and further this cause that promote good leadership within the construction industry. It's been a great experience. So thank you ever so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. That's it, really. Thank you very so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.